The first thing Captain Adrian Chen did when he encountered the abandoned alien station was laugh. Not a polite chuckle or a nervous twitter, but a full-blown, doubled-over, tears streaming down his face laugh that echoed through his ship's cramped cockpit. "You have got to be kidding me," he wheezed, wiping his eyes as he stared at the massive structure floating in the darkness of space. "This is what the almighty Jarix built. It looks like someone took a bunch of geometric shapes, threw them in a blender, and called it architecture." The station was indeed a bizarre sight. Imagine if a child got hold of every shape in their geometry textbook, supersized them to astronomical proportions, and stuck them together with space glue. Dodecahedrons sprouted from hexagonal prisms, which in turn connected to spheres via tubes that looked suspiciously like someone had forgotten to finish designing them. Adrian guided his ship, the modestly named Wanderlust, closer to the station. His scanners beeped frantically, trying to make sense of the structure's composition. "Hey, computer, give me a structural analysis that doesn't sound like you're having a stroke." The computer chirped in response. Primary structure composed of attempting to translate materials that shouldn't work together, but somehow do. Probability of original engineers understanding their own design, 23.7%. "That tracks," Adrian snorted, maneuvering toward what appeared to be a docking bay. The entrance was a perfect triangle, because apparently the Jarix had never heard of practical spacecraft design. Who needs rectangular doors when you can make your pilots play geometric Tetris every time they dock? As he approached the docking mechanism, he noticed the telltale signs of abandonment. Dust covered every surface, visible even from a distance thanks to the starlight reflecting off the particles. Various pieces of equipment floated aimlessly in space, creating an obstacle course of forgotten technology. "Beginning docking procedures," the computer announced, warning detecting multiple system failures, structural integrity compromises, and what appears to be the alien equivalent of a note fix later sticky note on the main reactor. Adrian raised an eyebrow. "How can you tell it's a fix later note?" "Because it's been there for approximately 47 years, based on material degradation." "Fantastic," Adrian muttered, watching as his ship's adaptive docking system attempted to interface with the alien tech. "So we've got a station built by geometry enthusiasts who apparently never heard of preventive maintenance. Computer, run a full diagnostic scan. Let's see just how badly they messed this up before they jumped ship." The computer hummed to life, sending out scanning beams that swept across the station's surface. After several minutes, it reported back. "Analysis complete. Would you like the results in professional technical format or painfully honest format?" "Hit me with the painful truth." "Station status. It's amazing this thing hasn't collapsed into a singularity of incompetence. Life support systems are operating at 12% capacity, mainly because they accidentally built them so redundantly that they can't completely fail. Primary power grid is being held together by what I can only describe as the spatial equivalent of duct tape. Also, there's a cafeteria that somehow still has a working coffee machine." Adrian perked up at the last bit. "Really? The coffee machine still works?" "No, that was a joke to lighten the mood before I tell you that the station's core systems are so fundamentally flawed, they apparently violated 3 laws of physics just by existing." Adrian grinned, a spark of interest lighting up his eyes. "Now that's what I call a fixer-upper opportunity." After ensuring his ship was securely docked, or as secure as one could be in a port designed by architects who thought gravity was optional, Adrian suited up and ventured into the station. His helmet lights illuminated corridors that looked like they were designed by someone who lost a bet. "Computer, download and translate any accessible data from the station's archives," Adrian commanded, stepping over what appeared to be an alien wrench that had evolved into modern art. "Let's figure out what this geometric nightmare was supposed to be." The response came through his helmet speakers. "Accessing main database. Warning. Whoever programmed this system apparently used binary code as interpretive dance." As Adrian explored deeper into the station, the computer pieced together the story. Station designation, Research Outpost Zeta 9. Primary purpose, development of revolutionary propulsion technology. Secondary purpose, looking impressively mysterious to passing spacecraft. "They failed at both, I'm guessing?" Adrian asked, pausing to examine a room filled with what looked like failed experiments or modern sculptures. It was honestly hard to tell the difference. According to the logs, the Jarix attempted to create a drive system that would harness the power of quantum uncertainty. Unfortunately, they were quite uncertain about how quantum mechanics actually worked. Adrian found the main research lab, a massive chamber shaped like a twisted octagon, because apparently regular octagons weren't confusing enough. Holographic displays flickered weakly, showing incomprehensible diagrams that resembled a cat playing with string theory. Their last entry indicates they abandoned the station after their lead scientist declared, and I quote, "The laws of physics are being unnecessarily stubborn about this." "Hang on," Adrian said, brushing dust off a control panel. "Are you telling me they gave up because the universe wouldn't bend its rules for them?" Essentially, they also left behind approximately 2,743 pages of complaints about how reality was clearly biased against their brilliant ideas. Adrian spent hours exploring the station, finding increasingly bizarre design choices and engineering solutions that defied both logic and safety regulations. The power core was housed in a room shaped like a spiral, with control panels mounted at angles that suggested the engineers had a vendetta against ergonomics. But beneath the absurdity, Adrian saw potential. The basic infrastructure, while wildly over-engineered, was surprisingly robust. The materials used in construction were top quality, even if they had been assembled by someone whose understanding of architecture came from abstract art. Standing in the central command room, surrounded by displays showing critical system failures and structural warnings, Adrian made his decision. "Computer, start compiling a list of required repairs and potential upgrades. We're going to fix this place up." Processing request. Suggested first step, redesign everything. Second step, pray. "I'm serious," Adrian said, already mentally sketching out improvements. "This station is basically space junk to them, but I see raw potential. Sure, it's going to take months of work, probably drain my savings, and possibly drive me insane, but think about it. How often do you get the chance to renovate an alien space station?" Calculating probability of success, error, common sense protocols attempting to override command. "Override accepted," Adrian grinned, cracking his knuckles. "Let's show these geometry-obsessed quitters how humans handle a challenge. First order of business, finding out who thought it was a good idea to put the bathroom in a Klein bottle configuration." Day one of Project What Could Possibly Go Wrong began with Adrian staring at a holographic blueprint of the station while nursing his third cup of coffee. His computer had finally managed to translate the Jarik's engineering documents into something resembling coherent plans, though the translation included an unusual number of question marks. "Right," Adrian muttered, "let's start with something simple like fixing the life support system." 6 hours later, covered in a substance that might have been coolant or alien modern art, Adrian learned that the Jarik's definition of simple involved routing atmosphere through a series of tubes designed like a Mobius strip. "Who builds a ventilation system with a philosophical argument about infinity?" he demanded, wielding a plasma torch with more aggression than precision. "Computer, mark down rule number 1. All air needs to flow in actual, trackable directions." The renovations continued, with Adrian attacking each system with a combination of human engineering principles and what he called aggressive optimism. The power core, which the Jarik's had somehow built to run on theoretical particles that didn't exist, got retrofitted with a hybrid fusion reactor. "Look," he explained to his computer while hanging upside down in a maintenance shaft, "if we can't use imaginary physics, we'll just have to settle for boring old reliable atomic fusion." The computer's response dripped with digital sarcasm. How disappointingly functional. One memorable afternoon involved Adrian discovering that the Jarik's had installed a waste recycling system that operated in 4 spatial dimensions. "They literally overcomplicated this so much they broke space-time," he announced, watching a wrench disappear into what looked like a tear in reality. "Computer, add retrieve tools from parallel dimension to tomorrow's to-do list." The station's defensive systems proved equally challenging. The original shield generators operated on what appeared to be interpretive mathematics, where 2 + 2 equaled whatever the shields felt like at the moment. Adrian replaced them with standard human deflector arrays, though he did keep one piece of alien tech that randomly turned incoming projectiles into abstract art. "It's completely useless as a defense," he admitted, watching a test missile transform into a floating metal swan, "but it'll make one hell of a conversation starter." Integration of human and alien technology became an exercise in creative problem-solving and occasional percussive maintenance. Adrian discovered that sometimes the best way to make the systems communicate was to convince them they weren't actually talking to each other. It's like technological couples counseling, he explained while coding a new interface. The human tech wants everything to make sense, and the alien tech is having an existential crisis about the nature of binary code, so we make them think they're just casually dating. The mishaps were numerous and spectacular. There was the incident with the artificial gravity going sideways, literally, which led to Adrian spending 3 hours walking on walls. Then came the day when the universal translator gained sentience and started composing poetry about the mathematical beauty of duct tape. At least it's better than human poetry about love, Adrian commented, before having to spend the next week apologizing to the translator by reading it Shakespeare. The station's original medical bay, designed by someone who apparently thought human anatomy was optional, got completely gutted and rebuilt. I don't care if their scanners can detect diseases in alternate timelines, Adrian declared, ripping out a diagnostic bed that kept trying to prescribe treatments for hypothetical ailments. I just want something that can handle a broken bone without questioning the philosophical nature of calcium. But slowly, improbably, the station began to transform. Human ingenuity met alien over-engineering, and somehow they found a middle ground. Adrian installed normal corridors alongside the geometric oddities, adding straightforward pathways while preserving some of the more interesting architectural features. The command center became a blend of practical human interfaces and exotic alien displays. Adrian kept the holographic systems that showed space in 11 dimensions. It's completely unnecessary but looks amazing during movie night, while adding standard navigation and communication arrays. After 3 months of work, cursing in multiple languages, and what the computer described as the most creative use of universal constants since the Big Bang, the station hummed with new life. The hybrid systems worked better than either pure human or Jarrett's technology, creating something uniquely efficient in its controlled chaos. Final systems check, Adrian announced, standing proudly in the renovated main hall. Computer, give me a status report. All critical systems functioning at 150% efficiency, which technically shouldn't be possible, but we're doing it anyway. Life support stable and operating in comprehensible numbers of dimensions. Power grid successfully ignoring the Jarrett's attempts to rewrite physics. Also, the coffee machine in the cafeteria makes better espresso than anything on Earth. Adrian grinned, looking around at his handiwork. The station now represented the best of both worlds, human practicality seamlessly merged with alien innovation. Where the Jarrett's had tried to bend reality, he had simply worked with it, creating something that was both functional and fantastically unique. You know what the best part is? He asked, patting a newly installed control panel affectionately. That we didn't accidentally create a black hole. Besides that, we proved that sometimes the best solution isn't the most complex one. Sometimes you just need some common sense, a lot of determination, and enough coffee to fuel a small star. The computer hummed thoughtfully. And only 17 temporal paradoxes along the way, a new record for human renovation projects. Speaking of which, Adrian said, checking his tablet, we should probably do something about that maintenance closet that's still experiencing time backwards. Add it to tomorrow's list. Yeah, right after figure out why the food replicator keeps making everything taste like existential uncertainty. Word spread through human space like a caffeinated rumor. There was this station, you see, where impossible things happened on a daily schedule. A place where human practicality danced a questionable tango with alien over-engineering, and somehow it worked better than anyone expected. Adrian's renovated station, now dubbed the Geometric Sunrise, because someone had to acknowledge all those shapes, became the go-to spot for traders, researchers, and anyone curious enough to witness hybrid technology in action. The docking bay, once a triangular nightmare, now accommodated ships of all shapes and sizes, thanks to what Adrian called adaptable geometry, a system that basically told physics to sit down and be flexible for a change. Welcome to Geometric Sunrise, Adrian would greet newcomers, where we break the laws of physics every Tuesday and Thursday, but only with proper paperwork filed in triplicate. The station's reputation grew with each successful innovation. The research labs, once filled with failed attempts to bend reality, now housed collaborative projects between human scientists and reformed alien tech. They developed shields that could fold space like origami, propulsion systems that treated Einstein's theories as polite suggestions, and a waste recycling system that somehow produced better materials than what went in. We're still not sure how that last one works, Adrian admitted during a tour for wide-eyed engineering students. But we've stopped questioning it since it started turning our garbage into premium construction materials. The hybrid medical bay became famous for its combination of practical human medicine and exotic alien diagnostics. Yes, we can cure your cold, the medical staff would explain to patients. We can also tell you what that cold would have evolved into in 17 alternate universes, but we find most people prefer just getting better. Trading companies rerouted their vessels to dock at geometric sunrise, drawn by the station's unique offerings. The marketplace buzzed with activity as merchants traded in both standard goods and what Adrian labeled probability exports, products created by the station's hybrid manufacturing systems that shouldn't technically exist, but worked anyway. Our latest bestseller is a navigation system that gets you where you need to go by calculating all the routes you shouldn't take and then doing the opposite, Adrian explained to a reporter from the Human Space Chronicle. It's actually more reliable than standard nav computers, as long as you don't think too hard about how it works. The station's power output exceeded anything the Jareks had dreamed of, mostly because their dreams had involved imaginary numbers and theoretical particles. Adrian's practical fusion core, enhanced with salvaged alien energy matrices, produced enough power to run the station and still have enough left over to sell to passing ships. We're basically powered by common sense with a twist of impossible, he told visitors. It turns out reality works better when you ask it nicely, instead of trying to rewrite its rules. Even the station's quirks became attractions. The maintenance closet that experienced time backwards became a popular spot for backing up computer data. After all, what better way to ensure your files were safe than storing them in yesterday? The food court featured a mix of standard human cuisine and dishes prepared by replicators that added quantum seasoning, creating flavors that technically didn't exist but tasted amazing. Research institutions across human space began sending teams to study the station's hybrid systems. The resulting papers were filled with phrases like theoretically impossible but observably functional and defying standard physics while remaining surprisingly stable. Adrian took it all in stride, watching his renovated station become exactly what the Jareks had failed to create. A hub of genuine innovation where the impossible became probable and the improbable became routine. You know what the real breakthrough was? He asked his computer one evening, watching ships dock in his geometrically creative bay. We stopped trying to force the universe to play by our rules and instead learned to dance with the rules it already had. That, and we actually bothered to maintain our systems instead of abandoning them when reality got stubborn, the computer added. True, Adrian chuckled. Though I have to admit, I never expected us to become the go-to place for what the Trade Commission is calling paradox-adjacent commerce. We do have the only shop in human space where you can buy Schrodinger's coffee, simultaneously the best and worst brew in the universe, until you take a sip. Adrian nodded, sipping his own quantum-uncertain beverage. And to think, all it took was some human common sense applied to alien overthinking. Speaking of which, has anyone figured out why the central elevator still occasionally stops on floors that don't exist? Working theory suggests it's taking shortcuts through probability space. Hey, as long as it gets people where they need to go, I'm counting it as a feature, not a bug. The Jareks returned on a perfectly normal Thursday, right in the middle of the station's weekly physics-bending maintenance schedule. Their ship, a collection of random geometric shapes that made Adrian's eyes hurt, dropped out of what they probably thought was cutting-edge FTL travel, but looked more like limping through space with extra sparkles. Computer, Adrian said, watching the approaching vessel from his command center. Please tell me that's not what I think it is. If you think it's a Jarek's diplomatic vessel carrying what appears to be their entire department of bureaucratic interference, then I have bad news for you. The ship attempted to dock at one of the triangular ports, apparently unaware that those had been reformed into something actually useful. After 3 failed attempts that looked like a geometry problem, having an existential crisis, Adrian took pity and had the adaptive docking system guide them in. The Jarix delegation that emerged consisted of 5 beings who appeared to have dressed themselves by consulting an abstract art gallery. Their leader, who introduced himself as High Administrator Zix 427 Delta Protocol Uncertainty Prime, or Bob as Adrian immediately decided to call him, took one look at the renovated docking bay and turned a shade of purple that shouldn't have been possible with their biology. "This is incorrect," Bob declared, waving a tentacle at the clearly functional equipment. "Our records indicate this station should be a derelict monument to the universe's stubborn refusal to cooperate with superior Jarix engineering." Adrian leaned against a wall that was simultaneously load-bearing and probability-shifting. "Sorry to disappoint, but I fixed it up a bit. Coffee." The entire delegation recoiled at the mention of the beverage, probably because they remembered their own failed attempts at creating a drink dispenser that had achieved sentience and started a small rebellion. "Fixed up." Another Jarix wearing what looked like bureaucratic credentials, folded into a Mobius strip, stepped forward. "This station was designed to push the boundaries of possible physics." "Oh, it still does that," Adrian assured them. "We just made sure it pushes those boundaries in useful directions instead of random ones. Want to see the waste recycling system? It turns garbage into premium materials and occasionally makes sarcastic comments about our consumption habits." The Jarix administrators huddled together, their tentacles twitching in what Adrian's translator suggested was extreme administrative distress. They produced tablets that projected holographic documents into at least 7 dimensions. "This is unprecedented," Bob announced after consulting his paperwork. "According to subsection Gamma 459 of the Interstellar Property Rights and Abandoned Research Facility Protocols, this station should be in a state of elegant decay, not productive functionality." About that, Adrian pulled out his own tablet, displaying the salvage rights he'd filed years ago. "You might want to check subsection 7 of the Human Space Salvage Code. You know, the part about abandoned vessels and stations becoming the property of whoever makes them work again." But, a particularly agitated Jarix waved a document that kept changing its own text. "We had plans to return, eventually, when the universe became more cooperative with our vision." Adrian gestured at the bustling station around them. "Well, the universe seems pretty cooperative now. We just had to ask nicely instead of trying to force it to rewrite its own laws." The delegation demanded a tour, probably hoping to find evidence that Adrian had somehow ruined their masterpiece of theoretical impossibility. Instead, they found a thriving station where their abandoned dreams had been turned into practical realities. The power core, now humming with stable fusion enhanced by their own recovered technology, made 2 of them faint. The medical bay, where human medicine worked alongside their diagnostic systems to actually heal people instead of just theorizing about alternate reality injuries, caused Bob to turn an entirely new shade of purple. "But this is all wrong," he protested as they passed a group of engineers discussing the latest upgrades to the probability folding shields. "Our designs were meant to transcend mere functionality." "And now they do," Adrian replied cheerfully. "We just made sure they transcend it in a way that actually works. Did you know your waste recycling system is now the most efficient in known space? Turns out all it needed was some basic maintenance and a sense of purpose." The final straw came when they reached the research labs, where human scientists worked alongside hybrid systems to develop new technologies that were both impossible and reliable. Bob pulled out what appeared to be an official complaint form that folded in on itself. "This is unacceptable. We are hereby reasserting our claim to this facility under the Grand Jarix Declaration of Theoretical Property Rights." "Really?" Adrian raised an eyebrow. "You might want to consult your legal team about abandonment laws first. Also, you should probably know that your complaint form just filed itself in yesterday, thanks to that temporal anomaly we domesticated in the filing room." The Jarix delegation bristled with bureaucratic indignation. "This means war," Bob declared, then quickly amended. "Legal war, through proper channels, with appropriate forms filed in quintuplicate." Adrian just smiled. "You know where to find us. We'll be here doing impossible things on schedule, with permits." The legal battle that followed could best be described as a clash between human straightforwardness and Jarek's bureaucratic gymnastics. The first hearing was held in the Interstellar Commerce Court, where the Jarek's legal team arrived with documents that existed in quantum superposition, simultaneously claiming and disclaiming ownership until observed by a notary. Adrian's lawyer, a pragmatic woman named Helen Wong, opened with a statement that would become famous in space law textbooks. "Your Honor, my client found garbage and turned it into gold. The previous owners are now upset that their garbage is worth something." The Jarek's representatives responded by attempting to submit evidence in non-Euclidean formats. The court clerk had to take a week off after trying to file a brief that kept rearranging its own paragraphs. "Let me get this straight," the judge said, pinching the bridge of his nose during one particularly chaotic session. "You abandoned the station because, and I quote, the fundamental constants of the universe were being unreasonable." "We did not abandon it," Bob protested from the witness stand. "We simply enacted a strategic withdrawal pending the evolution of more cooperative physics." Helen stood up. "Your Honor, I would like to enter into evidence the original Jarek's departure log, which states, and this is a direct quote, "Reality keeps insisting on making sense. We quit." Support for Adrian's cause grew throughout human space. Other colonies that had dealt with Jarek's abandoned technology started sharing their own stories. The Mars Settlement Commission testified about finding a Jarek's atmospheric processor that had been abandoned because it insisted on producing breathable air instead of their planned transcendent gas mixture. The Jarek's legal strategy grew increasingly desperate. They tried arguing that by making the station functional, Adrian had actually decreased its value as an artistic statement about the futility of practical engineering. This argument fell apart when they couldn't explain why they'd installed life support if the station was meant to be purely artistic. Furthermore, Helen argued during a crucial session, "My client has not only maintained the station, but improved upon every system. The Jarek's waste recycling system now processes garbage into valuable materials instead of its original function of converting matter into philosophical questions." "That was a feature, not a bug," the Jarek's engineering expert insisted from the stand. "How else were we supposed to contemplate the existential nature of refuse management?" Public opinion shifted dramatically in Adrian's favor when the Jarek's attempted to demonstrate their original vision for the station. Their technical presentation had to be evacuated when their holographic displays started creating actual alternate realities in the courtroom. "As you can see," Bob declared proudly while reality fractured around him, "our design principles transcend mere practicality." "Your design principles just turn the bailiff into a quantum probability," the judge observed dryly. "Court will recess until he stops existing in multiple states simultaneously." Human colonies began sending messages of support, often accompanied by their own salvage claims on abandoned Jarek's technology. The Europa research base revealed they'd converted a defunct Jarek's probability engine into a highly efficient water purification system. "Turns out it works great once you stop trying to purify water in 17 dimensions, their chief engineer reported. The final blow to the Jarek's case came when their own records revealed a centuries-old policy of abandoning projects that didn't match their artistic vision of how the universe should work. Helen presented evidence of dozens of stations, ships, and installations left to drift in space because reality had failed to live up to Jarek's expectations. "Your Honor," she concluded, "the pattern is clear. The Jarek's abandoned functional technology because it isn't theoretical enough. My client took their abandoned theory and made it functional. Under any reasonable interpretation of salvage law, the station belongs to the person who made it work." The Jarek's made one last desperate attempt to sway the court by bringing in their chief philosopher of temporal property rights, who argued that since time was relative, they hadn't really abandoned the station because they had always intended to return eventually. "By that logic," Adrian pointed out, "I technically owned the station before you built it, since time is relative, and my eventual ownership was predetermined by your eventual abandonment." The chief philosopher had to be excused after that comment caused him to have an existential crisis about the nature of property rights across multiple timelines. Throughout the proceedings, the station continued to operate, its hybrid systems functioning better than ever. Human engineers submitted testimony about how the integration of practical engineering with Jarek's theoretical technology had advanced human understanding of physics by decades. "We're not just running a station," Adrian testified. "We're proving that even the most outlandish alien technology can be made useful with enough human determination and a healthy respect for reality's rules." The Jarek's representatives watched in horror as their case unraveled faster than their attempts at nonlinear engineering. Their final appeal consisted mainly of interpretive mathematics and a strongly worded letter that kept changing its own meaning. The final judgment came down on a day when the station's probability-enhanced shields were creating particularly spectacular light shows. The Interstellar Commerce Court's decision was delivered in a document that, unlike the Jarek submissions, maintained the same text no matter how many dimensions you read it in. In recognition of established salvage laws, demonstrated improvements, and the principle of "you break it, you abandon it, someone else fixes it, tough luck," this court hereby recognizes the geometric Sunrise Station as the legal property of Captain Adrian Chen. The Jarek's delegation's reaction was everything Adrian could have hoped for. Bob turned so purple he briefly became ultraviolet, while the rest of the bureaucrats generated enough bureaucratic outrage to power a small city. But our artistic vision," Bob sputtered, his tentacles tying themselves in geometric knots of distress. "Our grand design for transcendent technology." Adrian couldn't resist. "You mean the grand design that's now actually working, the one that's generating breakthrough discoveries instead of just generating headaches? That grand design." The court added several specific provisions, each one more delightfully pointed than the last. The Jareks were required to acknowledge in writing that human engineering had succeeded where their theoretical impossibilities had failed. They also had to update their official records to indicate that functionality was, in fact, not a design flaw. "We even kept some of your more interesting features," Adrian told the departing aliens. "The bathroom that exists in non-Euclidean space is very popular with tourists. We just added proper plumbing so it actually, works." The formal transfer of ownership ceremony was broadcast across human space. Adrian stood in the station's main hall, now a perfect blend of practical human design and reformed alien geometry, while the Jarek's representatives grudgingly signed documents that wouldn't rearrange their own text for at least 5 minutes. "As a gesture of goodwill," Adrian announced, trying not to grin too widely, "we're happy to share our maintenance logs showing how we made your technology functional. They're written in simple, linear logic that only exists in 3 dimensions. We figured you could use the help." Bob's response was a sound that the universal translator rendered as bureaucratic screaming in geometric. The ceremony concluded with Adrian presenting the Jareks with a parting gift, a human-engineered coffee maker enhanced with their own theoretical technology. "It makes coffee that exists in a quantum superposition of perfect flavor," he explained. "But unlike your version, it won't try to philosophically debate with its users about the nature of beverage consciousness." As the Jarek ship prepared to depart, attempting 3 times to disconnect from the docking clamps before Adrian's systems took pity and helped them, Bob delivered one final pronouncement. "This victory of yours," he declared, waving a tentacle dramatically, "merely proves that humans are distressingly focused on making things work instead of appreciating the theoretical beauty of failure." "Thank you," Adrian replied cheerfully. "We'll take that as a compliment. Oh, and your ship's probability drive is misaligned. Might want to fix that before you end up in a dimension where paperwork files itself." The geometric sunrise became more than just a station after that. It became a symbol of human ingenuity, a testament to what could be achieved when practical engineering met theoretical impossibility halfway. Engineering schools across human space started offering courses in hybrid theoretical practical applications, the geometric sunrise method. Adrian expanded the station's research facilities, adding departments dedicated to making the impossible practical. They specialized in taking abandoned alien technology and finding ways to make it work within the actual laws of physics, much to the continued frustration of various alien races who insisted that reality should be more flexible. "You know what the real victory is?" Adrian asked his computer one evening, watching ships dock smoothly in ports that no longer required geometric calculations to access. "We proved that the universe isn't stubborn, it just appreciates a bit of common sense mixed with its impossibilities." "That, and we finally fixed the coffee machine in Sector 7, the computer added. The one that used to serve existential dread with extra cream. Progress comes in many forms, Adrian agreed, raising his perfectly normal cup of coffee to the view of space outside. Here's to making the impossible practical, one renovation at a time. The station hummed around him, its hybrid systems working in perfect harmony, a testament to what happens when human determination meets alien overthinking and comes out on top. Somewhere in the distance, a Xerix bureaucrat was probably still filing complaints in multiple dimensions, but that was no longer Adrian's problem. After all, he had a station to run, one that worked perfectly well in just the right number of dimensions, thank you very much.